What's up, everyone? It's Kyle Mullins. I'm here with Mark and Andy, and we're here to talk Star Wars cards. We didn't come with like a super agenda, but there are some topics and some things that have, been going around the community lately, and we figured we'd just have a chat about it and see where we're at with those. Uh, Andy, needs no introduction, and Mark Darth Vader also needs no introduction. So we don't
Wait,
really
moving
need.
right along. Listen,
But
that's what I like.
but we were one of the things that just come to mind that we were talking about before we got on this recording was Andy has this whole misprint collection, and I saw the picture posted on the Star Wars customizable card group, and I was like, so you're going for like a complete premiere misprint, miscut, error, like misaligned set, like a limited specifically, or like of all different cards?
Could be
What's
limited, could be unlimited. Misprints are sometimes far and few between on certain types of certain cards, like Vader or Obi-Wan or something. So if it's unlimited versus limited, it doesn't really matter to me. Obviously, I'd probably prefer black border, but beggars can't be choosers when it comes to that. I'm about 220 cards done. So I've got maybe like 100 cards left to
Yeah, it's
get.
definitely something like I mean, I'm sure most people were like, this card's messed up. Like, throw it in a bulk box and get rid of it. Like, I've definitely come across some weird cards, but I've pretty much always just thrown them in a bulk box and then see ya. I don't, I never really put much thought into it. Had I known, somebody was like actively looking for like messed up cards, it just never occurred to me. But I don't know why it didn't, because it's certainly a thing in other graded things, like at least in the graded currency world that I'm from, like people definitely collect errors, miscuts, wrong back, like all that kind of stuff. That stuff goes for stupid money. I don't know if it'll go for something expensive on CCG. It's almost like its own niche, but it is really cool. It is really interesting. I don't know if that would be something in the graded market too, Mark. I don't know if somebody would specialize in the oddball and error stuff.
Well, I only own two. Actually, I own a couple graded cards, but my prized graded card is a PSA 7 foil Prince Zizor, but the label says that it's a foil reflections to ultra rare Lord Vader. Clearly, this is not Lord Vader.
Wait, so in the PSA, like when you put in the number, it shows up as Lord Vader,
Lord Vader, and then on the label, it's printed Lord Vader.
Clearly, grading is an inexact science at times.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I've seen some weird labels come through for sure, but I wonder if PSA has been improving on that. I don't think I've seen enough of them to know if they're like.
Apparently, according to the graded admins, they're working on putting the registries in place. So I guess that would somehow codify what the cards officially are. Whether that'll actually help, I don't know, but in theory, it probably should.
Yeah, because
Jared Greenwald had graded cards. He sent in some of the like Japanese Hoth 2-player cards, and they labeled them as Chinese. And I was trying.
Can't do that in 2023. That's not allowed.
He sent them back to be relabeled, and I was like, please don't send them back to be relabeled. I really want that it's Chinese, please. But he sent them all back to be relabeled anyway, so I missed out on having the only Chinese Star Wars CCG cards.
I mean, it's funny, like with Pokemon cards. I mean, you have like those whole Chinese fakes, right? We haven't seen like Chinese fakes of Star Wars CCG. I don't think it's big enough to do that, or maybe there's just no interest to do that. But that would have been really interesting, even to come across like a fake card, like a long back in the day. It'd be like you rip it and you're like, oh, it doesn't have the the film in the middle. This is a fake, That would have been cool. But yeah, I don't know anything about the errors, miscuts, and all that stuff. I mean, if it would certainly look cool. It's certainly a good discussion topic.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, you just like, there's nothing left to collect, right? Like
Yeah.
it took me one day to get all the sets. I just emailed somebody and said I would like one of every set, and then that was that. So there was no challenge in collecting any of that stuff. And then like, same with the foil sets. It's just like I want one of every foil set and done. And what else do you get to collect? So now I just collect like really oddball stuff, like marketing material and different like prototypes and reflections gold and errors and stuff, because that's actually like a challenge to find some of that stuff.
What is each of yours like most recent acquisition? I mean, I can tell you the most recent thing I picked up was another sealed off Japanese booster pack, but what's like the most recent Star Wars related thing you acquired?
I got a bunch of double printed, miscut, error Japanese Hoth dark side rares. This seller kind of did. I don't know if you guys know Will Tarbox.
Yeah,
He did Will Tarbox dirty. He put them up on eBay for $100. Will snapped them up within like 2 seconds of them being listed. So the guy put them on Facebook, but never told anybody. Will didn't see it. I bought them off the guy on Facebook for more than $100. The guy sold them to me, and then Will messaged him and was like, "Did this guy sell these to you?" And I was like, "Yeah." They showed up to my door like 2 days later, and
wait, Will showed up to your door?
no,
Will's like, "Yo, what happened here?"
Let's go, buddy. Yeah, no, so he got completely screwed out of those cards by the seller.
Wow, that's messed up from the seller.
That was messed up, but yeah, there was. Well, he had not two sets, but like two lots of them. There was one lot that had 28 cards, and there was 24 unique ones of the 27 dark side rares. So it was missing 3. And then I messaged him and I was like, "Hey, I don't know where you got these from. I guess the guy lives in like North Carolina, near the like North Carolina Virginia border, which like Norfolk, Virginia is like right there on the North Carolina Virginia border, which is where Decipher was headquartered. So I guarantee you these were like things that didn't pass quality control or somehow got slipped into packs. People sent them in as like damaged cards to Decipher, and they walked out of Decipher's headquarters 25 years ago, and they just resurfaced. So guy said he bought them and a lot of cards or a lot of Star Wars items, because he runs like a comic store, or like a comic and toy store down in North Carolina somewhere. Somebody walked into his store and was like, "I've got all this stuff I want to sell. It's all Star Wars related stuff." And there was like a couple thousand Star Wars CCG cards, and like in there was like all these like crazy Hoth misprints. And the guy was like, I guess he said like, "Hey, if you've got any more stuff, come bring it back," because I paid quite a good amount of money, more than $100 for them, and I guess the guy went home, came back like 2 days later with like 12 more that he had, and it had one of the 3 that was missing, a Blizzard Scout 1. So now I'm only missing 2 misprinted dark side Hoth cards. I don't think there's going to be any more, which is unfortunate because I'm missing a Death Mark and a Meteor Impact to have. And I mean, they're like super crazy. They're like double, triple printed. Like the text is like completely blurry.
Is it Japanese or in English?
English.
There's an
And
English.
They're really severely miscut. And I've looked at them. They're not non-factory cut. Like it'd be impossible to duplicate this printing errors on them. Like these were sheets that must have been fed in like sideways. It had already been printed. Yeah, they're
You think somebody
really.
was just like screwing around, like, oh, let's just see what happens?
You know how like Hoth has like this kind of grainy feel to it, like when you touch the cards, they kind of have like they're not like gloss like Dagobah and Cloud
Yeah,
City,
yeah.
but like Premier and A New Hope are kind of matte, where like they don't slide really nicely off of each other. But Hoth,
Mhm.
they like tried to do it without um, gloss. They put like it's like a grainy feel, so they slide easier. But these ones feel like Unlimited Premiere, where they're like matte. I mean, they're just really crazy misprints. So I got 40 of them in total. 26 or 25 of 27 dark side, and then 15 are duplicates, with 4 of them being triple. I have 3 Wampas, 3 Image of the Dark Lords, 3 Piets, and 3 Yackle Gackles. Pretty
How
cool.
Yeah, it seems pretty cool though. I mean, like I said, I mean they should hold some value given how rare they are, but that's probably pretty niche. It sounds like it would have been like, maybe a single sort of event of errors.
Yeah, it's probably one sheet, because each sheet of Hoth has 2 of every rare 1 and 4 of every rare 2.
Right.
So,
So it probably
like,
happened more. Yeah.
it was probably one complete um, Dark Side Hoth sheet that got misprinted and then packaged and sent out. So somebody opened probably a case of Hoth and
Mm.
got all of these. And yeah,
It was like, what the heck is
it's
this?
like it's a one-off, one sheet print of Dark Side Hoth.
I'm trying to
But
think how I would have reacted, like pulling something with that extreme of an error out of a box. If I would have been like really annoyed or like, that seems kind of strange. Like maybe
well,
I should
for
hold
me,
on.
I collect like crazy oddball stuff, so I'd have been super happy with it. But like most people would have been annoyed, which is probably why they ended up back at Decipher's headquarters, because somebody probably spent at the time in 1996, probably $700 or so for a case of Hoth, right? Because they're probably like $150 a box, and you get 6. So whatever that is, 6 times 150, $900 for a case of Hoth, and got like a lot of dark side rares that they couldn't really play with, right? Because they're like really screwed up. Probably contacted Decipher. Decipher says, send them to us. We'll replace them with packs of Hoth. You guys sent in, 40 or so of them. They then sit on Jennifer Ketterman's desk at Decipher, who she was the QA,
Right.
admin lady. And they just sit there, and probably somebody comes by and is like, oh, these are pretty neat, and like picks them up and takes them to their desk. And then when everybody's fired after Rick Edelman embezzles everything out of the company, they just like leave with that person out the door, sit
Yeah.
in some guy's garage for 30 years, and then sell it at a flea market. Some guy picks it up and then takes it to a toy store to try and flip it. This guy's like, yeah, payday. Thanks, Andy.
I mean, yeah, for something that otherwise as a company would have been in the garbage, not a bad pull. I mean, I wonder what the census is. I mean, you brought up cases. Like, I've never seen a case. I'm not saying they don't exist, and we obviously know there'd be some at Skywalker Ranch, but like, how many cases of any Star Wars product are there floating around? I mean,
Sealed, probably.
like a sealed taped box of like,
There might be some for OTSDs. I think Hills Wholesale had a bunch back in like the mid 2000s. So they might still be able to find somebody that has like a sealed case of OTSD that's like actual taped by Cardamundi.
yeah, because I feel like if you had a sealed case, I mean, there would be no reason to open that, now, like the value
I
of
mean,
that.
I've been hunting for a sealed case of anything. I
Yeah.
have empty case boxes. I have a few of them, but
I feel like there's probably some sealed cases of Premiere out there, but they're probably in someone's like shed that they put away when the game was first coming out, and just probably I don't know, they're locked away somewhere. Because I feel like that's the one where people will have their like cases, although usually not sealed, and they'll pull them out and sell them on the forums. Like I've seen it a few times.
Yeah, I've seen that a couple times. Somebody will be like, "Oh, I got a case, and there's 6 boxes here, but the case itself is open."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I would love if this was not open. I would pay a lot of
Yeah.
money for it.
Oh yeah, that would definitely command a super premium because that would be super, super rare.
Right.
That would be really rare.
But no sealed cases.
Yeah, I mean, I think also even if you did come across a case, I mean, you'd keep it because you'd be like, well, I'm the only one with like a sealed case. But like, if you were trying to flip something like that, I mean, where do you even put a number on that? I mean, you could say, well, it's worth 100,000, and like, no one can challenge you if it is the only one. You know, you would never open that. But I mean, who's to say?
I mean, it's just
value that.
whatever somebody's going to offer, you'd end up probably having to auction it.
But even still, like, how many people would actually have the means to do it, you know, and be aware of it while it's going on? You know, like
no
it's
idea.
not.
But if you've got a sealed case, just send me a message.
I feel like we need to go to like some third world country. It's sitting in a warehouse somewhere by accident, like just hanging out. Like it's just like, how did you come across this? They're like, oh, some ship ended up here and the wrong shipment there, and it just sat here. You know, like it's gonna be some weird, obscure, crazy story.
Even beyond that, I'm curious how many like boxes there are around, because that's like, we do see those come and pass, like, you know, and people do open them to either sell packs or just to rip. So I'm curious, like, I don't know, like just of the different sets, like how many boxes there are, and maybe there's no good answer to that, like easy answer rather.
Well, that's why, like, if I want packs to rip, I'd rather just buy booster packs. You know, it wouldn't make sense for me to open a box just to open up all the packs individually. There's enough individual packs floating around that people have kept to open those. Now I get it could be mapped out packs and stuff like that, but like you're right. Like I don't have a full census on boxes, and at the going rate of box rips, you know, year over year, it's been out, you know, 20 plus years, and now with grading, people want to open those to get better cards. I mean, we could be seeing an acceleration of opening those. Maybe not. I don't know.
But, yeah, I mean, I think so. I think I'd have to pull up the post I did on the Star Wars graded group, because Cameron had me pin it, where I did a bunch of math on Premiere, and there's like 500,000. No, there's a lot of. Here, let me just pull it up here while I'm talking about it. There's a lot of Premiere boxes, like a lot of Premiere boxes.
Unlimited or limited?
Limited, and unlimited is like, it's like way more. If you're talking about Feed Palace or Coruscant or something, you know, very minimal amount of. Like,
yeah, I mean, I feel like of the packs that people open, for the most part, I mean, it comes back to Premiere because it's the first set, right? Like that's the beginning. That's where it all started. That's what everyone knows, you know, for the most part. And it is really difficult to, you know, get good grades on those, but it's also a very large set, and it brings back a lot of nostalgia. Whereas like Feed Course, like probably not. Like I was in high school then, like I don't know. I wasn't seeing the boxes around in the mall stuff. I wasn't thinking about it. You know, it's just kind of.
Yeah, I don't remember what happened to the actual post, but there was like, so there's what 100,000 Premiere Vaders, right?
Yeah.
Well, at one point, right?
Sure.
Yeah, that's how many were.
When the print run was initially printed, there's 100,000 Premiere Vaders. When you split out the math, it's about 1 Vader per case. So like if you had 11 cases, if you had 10 cases of Premiere, you would probably end up with 11 Vaders.
Oh, okay.
So it's not like, it's like 1.1 Vaders per case. Sometimes you're going to open 2, most times you're going to open 1. So it's about 1, and that's for any rare one, not just Vader, you know. Devastator, etc. It's one per case, which is why that set is impossible to put together, and everybody opens up Seekers, as you're well aware.
I was thinking actually, like, part of my sick mind was like, maybe I just keep buying Seekers, celebrate Seekers, and have a binder of Seekers.
And it's not exact because it gets split between starter decks and like
starter.
because you get 24 rares in a box of starter decks versus 36 in a booster box. And okay, so there's like a little bit of fudging of numbers there roughly.
Well,
but
the rare one odds are definitely better in the starter decks, and like not even just the Japanese ones I've opened, but beyond that, like I've generally pulled like decent cards or better cards than I would have from just ripping boosters out of the starter decks. Like it feels like on average it's like 1R1, 1R2. Sometimes it's two R1s. I mean that does happen. Less likely of 2R2s, but it's usually been 1R1 and R1 for me. Like in my probability, because when I start looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, I got these from a starter deck, not a booster.
But, I mean, yeah. So roughly, we can say that there's probably somewhere between, say, 80 and 110,000 cases.
How many uncommon ones are on a sheet?
I don't know off the top of
The
my head.
reason I ask that is because sometimes some of the uncommon ones feel more rare than
an Imperial class Star Destroyer is harder to pull out of a pack than a tactical recall.
Yeah, that card is harder to pull. And of all the Japanese stuff I've ripped, I think I've only found it like once or twice. And
uncommon ones
opened an entire box and multiple starters at this point. So like, yeah, it does not come up very often.
Yeah, uncommon ones are a lot harder to get than rare twos, I think, roughly.
Yeah, because
they're like right about the same. You might get like 3 or 4 copies in a case, something like that.
Yeah, it's not many, and I think it's not talked about. But I was like, well, maybe I should put some aside, like the really nice uncommon ones, and and if I get a Star Destroyer like just regularly in good shape, like I would definitely not hesitate to grade that because I was like, I just don't see many of them.
Yeah. So yeah, but you figure there's like 100. We'll just ballpark it at 100,000 cases. That's 600,000 boxes of Premier, give or take, how much ever you want to round for starter decks and stuff. And 600,000 boxes is a lot of boxes.
It is. A lot would have been ripped, though. I think a lot of people would have had boxes open that they used to store cards in when the hobby was like at its peak, right? So like I have multiple, 2-player starters and anthology boxes. I use them to store cards to this day. Like they're not in great shape, but
sure. But even if you said 90% of boxes were opened, there's still 60,000 sealed boxes of Premier. I mean, the player base for Star Wars now, the collector base, player base combined is honestly maybe 1,500 people, if that. That's an aggressive number. Like there's probably 150 competitive tournament players in the world. Maybe you might push that to like 175. And then there's probably several hundred like active collectors, and then maybe like, I don't know, 1,000 other people that are like casual collectors. You got what, maybe 2,000 people? I mean,
well, they have all the sellers, right? You have all the comic shops and stuff that may have that stuff like in their back.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like there's not enough people that actually care about Star Wars CCG where the 500,000 boxes of Premier that have been opened over the last 25 years, like you've got like active tournament players generally don't care about keeping sealed product in their house, right? They're playing it to play. And if you're a collector that's going after like set collection, there's plenty. There's mountains of Premiere out there that's, still in great shape. People rip open a pack, take the rare out, put the cards aside, like pack fresh, which for Premiere is like, grading a 7. It's just awful card stock. But, if you really want it Premiere as a collector, there's infinite amounts of Premiere out there for servicing the couple thousand people that actually care about it. Like, I have a Premiere set. I think I have 6 Premiere sets. I don't need 6 Premiere sets. I need 1 Premiere set. That's it. I have 72 Darth Vaders. What am I going to do with 72 Darth Vaders, right? They're all in decks and all this kind of stuff. I have enough Darth Vaders that I don't need any more Darth Vaders for the rest of my life. If I get them in a random collection, great. I got another Darth Vader. I'll just add it to the stack. But like, you know what I mean? Like, there's just
yeah. No, I get it because
like 60,000 boxes still sealed. That's assuming 90% of the print run was already open. Even if you said 98% of the print run was already open, that still is leaving you with like 10, 12,000 sealed boxes of Premiere that like it would take a long time for people to churn through that. Even at the rate that because you also have to think like probably between like 2002, 2001, 2002, and probably like 2017, nobody cared about opening up Premiere. Like, if I said there was 2,000 people active now, that's because 1,500 of them came back during pandemic.
Well, yeah, plus we hit that sort of 20-year nostalgic cycle where now the people that were like, oh, that was fun, and I now have, the money and means to buy the things I couldn't get when I was, younger that I always wanted, whatever. So if you're
like even people that are like for the most part, people are ripping to make content for YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or something, and to send in cards for grading. Neither of those things were a thing in 2012, right? Like,
that would have been so weird. Like, could you imagine? Like, hey, look at this, I'm grading. I was like, everyone's like, nobody cares.
What?
Why? That's so wrong.
So, like, even if you're buying Premiere limited boxes for $35 a piece in 2011, like, nobody was buying Premiere for 2011. But one guy in the world is buying Premiere,
But wouldn't you say the connectivity and technology has changed enough? I mean, with social media and like how, players, collectors, sellers, all this stuff it's never been an easier time to, match the right people who are looking for one thing and selling another thing or want to play, and then with GEMP and Alderon apps, I mean, they're trying to make it easier and lower the bar, back to entry. And, there's all these groups and it's active. The environment's different too. I mean, it's just more inviting for that, like to get back into it.
I absolutely agree. That's why the 3 of us are all here, right? There was a perfect storm of everything occurring between like 2019 and 2021 that was like, all right, here we are.
Mark, I want to pick your brain too. Where we last left off, we were talking about how we're in a point where the market's like saturated with more and more, graded cars coming into the market, and everyone's dropping it. Prices are going down. Are things doomed? Like, what's going on? Where do you feel that's at right now, or since we last chatted, or from what you've seen?
So, yeah, I don't remember when we last chatted on. I imagine about a month or 2 ago. So right now is January 2023. It probably would have been in like November or so.
It was before I moved, so must have been December.
Okay, December, right? Yeah, there's a few things going on there. Like, one, the economy still kind of feels a little tedious isn't the right word, but it's slowed. Yeah, slowed. People are worried about recession still. Lots of layoffs happening. So that kind of puts the damper on what are to other people, not us, of course, but to other people viewed as somewhat frivolous expenditures. So, you know, you're worried about losing your employment. Maybe don't submit so many cards to get graded this month, right? I might have to dial back a bit. I have to save some money in case you know, things fall through, that sort of thing. People are worried. But that's also bled through, I think, into a lot of other hobbies, not just Star Wars card collecting, but a lot of other card collecting hobbies, because they're all kind of, you know, there's the same or similar pools of people. You know, maybe they only have one or two, but it kind of all just goes together. Like sports cards, my understanding has been getting clobbered. Magic's been getting clobbered, but that's other reasons with like the company, but still not doing well. So these all kind of feel the same in terms of like how they kind of feel good, feel bad. Right now, it's kind of like a feel bad as far as prices go. So prices are kind of going down.
For sports cards, you're talking about.
Well, sports is one, but then I think Magic also, but that's kind of got a different reason. The company's kind of, people think the company's kind of driving it into the ground just to milk the cash out. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that across channels too. What about Pokemon too? I mean, isn't that oversaturated?
Pokemon, the Pokemon
that
company seems to be doing a better job of keeping their golden goose alive. Like somehow, like they seem to be like maybe like the free range eggs, like they're treating their chickens well. It's like, all right, you need anything, just let us know. We'll keep making the golden eggs, right? And then Magic is like choking their. Oh, that's a naughty word to say, but they're strangling that chicken and like trying to wring every little last drop out of it. You know, like, you should probably like treat it nicer, and they're just like they'll hiss at you like.
I'm so glad.
I think part of that though is the parent company, like
yeah,
right, like toys in general are just crapping the bed, for lack of a better term. All right. I mean, that's as polite as I'll put it, but like,
you're talking about toys at what level? Like preteen?
So like Hasbro's stuff, right? Like if you think about
stuff?
action figures, that type of stuff, like if you really think about the way that collectibles evolve, right? So like before, like prior to say the 1950s, toys are the domain of kids, right? And it's like really crappy toys, Erector sets, Lincoln Logs, like nobody wants any of that junk, right?
I played with Lincoln Logs the other day. I was like, these are so terrible. They don't stay together.
Right.
Anyway.
But like the things that maintain value from say and I use the 50s as like this demarcation on it because that's when television really comes out, right? So like anything from before like the TV era, right? I guess television came out in probably like 1947 or something like that, right?
Simpler toys. Right?
So like all that stuff is like the stuff that's still worth, there's stuff that's saved from that time, comic books and pretty much baseball cards, right? I'm sure there's like some other random stuff like, but like who cares? Like who honestly is collecting stamps and stuff like that? Like that's where like
I've gone to a stamp show before, and there's nobody under the age of like 70 in there, and you can smell it when you walk in the door. Like it
smells like that.
None of this is interesting. Like I tried, I was like, okay, I'm like, no, I can't do this. I can't.
Yeah, like so, like collecting, like back then, like wasn't toys. We'll say, right? Collecting was money, stamps. That's really it, right? Kids collected baseball cards because you get them out of Cracker Jack boxes and comic books, and all that stuff got thrown away by parents, right? So the like stamps and coins didn't, because that was probably older people. But people now, like, I know you do like $2 bills and stuff, right? But like, I really wish I had, man, it's completely in the weeds on this one with me for like, a complete side tangent. I really wish I had just like committed to like buying out $500 bills from like 2017 on.
Oh my God.
I should have done that.
Much money.
Because $500 bills were only like $700.
Yeah, but you know what? The big bills are for like big boy collectors, like the super rich, the guys
Yeah,
that
but
are
that's like
kids are,
that's like
really
anything over. I would say $500 is not that, right? Like
no, they have
thousands.
$500,000 bills. They have $5,000, $10,000 bills, like crazy amounts of
Sure,
money.
those are right. A $10,000 bill is $250,000 right now, but
Oh, it's insane.
like but so I really wish I had just like committed to like buying out $500 bills consistently whenever they got onto eBay and just like hoard them and just hold them, because you talk about market manipulation. That's the easiest one to do, is $500 bills. But anyway, off the tangent. So like when you get to the 50s, right, and TV comes along, um, kids start doing stuff like there's like really still terrible television like Howdy Doody, and I don't even know what else came out in the 50s, Bozo the Clown and stuff like that, right? And like
Weird stuff.
all that stuff got thrown out. It's not really until you start seeing commercialization of television in the 60s and 70s that like you start getting into like toys actually being collectibles. And that really hits by the like 80s and 90s. Once you get into the internet age, this democratization of social hierarchies that's brought about by the internet collapsed toy markets, right? Because now
Be right back real
toys are
quick.
no longer. What's up?
I say be over back real quick so I get something.
Like no longer were toys necessarily like.
So they're not rare because people were able to
Right,
see
they're not
how
rare because you have the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s as precedent for like collecting things. Like, sure, there's stuff from like the 60s and 70s now that are like actually worth money, but really only stuff that comes from like IPs that have lasted the testament of time, right? Like Star Wars, Transformers, you know, $7 Million Man, all that kind of stuff. Like, but
well, it was like Transformers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came later.
I mean, some of that's more like 80s stuff. There's a ton. There is a god awful ton of Playmates Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from like 1985, like 1987. Like you can just find that stuff endlessly. And especially once you get into the 90s, like if you think about like the Star Wars figures that were released in the 90s, that stuff is just, it's going to take 60, 70 years for that stuff to actually have gone up any amount of value. And by that point, like you may have gotten off of the IP, like something else could have come along to like get people off that IP.
I have some Star Wars figures, but I'm like, they're not, they've never been much value, I guess if you had
from the 80s, the 70s and 80s, the original
or something, like something that's a one-off, like the working rocket blaster from Boba Fett figure or something, that's different.
Right. So like, old Kenner stuff has gone up in value, but it has mostly gone up the most amount of value since 2020, right? Like most other collectible markets. Now that has maintained value over the last couple of years. But I think when you look at, say, like Hasbro, they just keep putting out junk, right? Like if you're a kid, you don't necessarily really have a huge connection to Transformers, right? I'd say the only company that I think
are they juggling the fact that there's adult collectors. I mean, for some
but
of these,
adult
like
collectors don't really want new Transformers. You want 80s Transformers, right? The only company that I think has actually done a good job of managing their portfolio is the Lego Group, right?
Yeah, Legos are still hold their value pretty well, and
they do, but they've also diversified the way the types of Legos. Like they've realized that that more adults like Lego probably than kids like Lego. Kids get Lego because their aunt who doesn't know anything, some normie old lady, buys them a play set of Duplo blocks and the kids play with it. But the people who genuinely float Lego along are adult fans of Lego that want to build their own creations, and that's where you see those like beautiful black boxes of Lego, and they're like $500 for a set. That's what's floating Lego. But like an adult, like I have no desire to go into Target and buy literally any of the toys that are there. They're all like, I don't want that toy. I want a toy from 70s or 80s when I was a kid. I don't want a Black Series Star Wars. I get there's a bunch of people that want that. Or toys went really high end, like Hot Toys, 1/6 scale figures, Sideshow collectibles. I mean, that stuff's all like hundreds of dollars for one figure.
So like some toys are just so expensive that it's like, well,
right. So they're not really for kids. So Hasbro's in this like spot where like none of their portfolio does well. And Magic does phenomenal in terms of the money that it brings in. So as the rest of Hasbro just bleeds money endlessly because they're just trying anything and everything to get like that one hit toy so that they can like carry it through for a few years while they're just bleeding money, like hemorrhaging it like crazy. And they use Magic to supplement it, right? So it's not so much necessarily that I think WotC is doing something wrong, because the people who are still in charge of WotC are still the same people that were there 10 years ago, right? Aaron Forsyth and Mark Rosewater and, all the Gavin Verhey and, all those kind of guys that are still in charge of running Magic are still the same people that were there when it was not being like absolutely brutalized by Hasbro. It's all the Hasbro execs that got into the job in the 90s, who learned from somebody who had been in the job from the 70s, who basically just hit it off because everything was pure, everything was siloed. Right? There was no flattening or fracturing of fandom that happened when the internet comes along. So like, if you're some old guy from the 70s training some guy in the 90s who still is existing in this siloed period pre-internet, now is in the 2010s and 2020s trying to like figure out what the hell's wrong at Hasbro. It's like, nobody wants your toys is what's wrong. Like you put out junk. You should be fired. But you're a 60-year-old guy. Like Hasbro has major issues. I was actually surprised that there wasn't a hostile takeover when the stock dropped down below $50 a share. But anyway, that's my soapbox about Hasbro. They can go jump off a lake.
I mean, they could just listen to the fans and stop thinking, oh, we're just going to reuse the same molds and just slap.
But they can't, right? Because
it's a different line.
They can't, because it's so expensive to redo all that stuff.
That's when you become too big for your own good. Essentially.
Right, so that's why there probably should have been a hostile takeover when it hit below $50 a share, and a more agile, nimble company could come in and shed off all these old IPs that they don't need and reorg the whole corporate structure. But I'm not a hostile takeover specialist. Don't listen to me. I'm a guy in a beat up Adidas shirt here on a Star Wars CCG talk show where we're talking about.
We went off the deep end here. We really went off the deep end.
Yeah, I love going off the deep end.
Mark, you look like you're ready to say a lot of things.
I just agree with Andy that I like going off the deep end as well. That's all I need to say from that conversation. No, but I think what were we talking? Oh yeah, like the collecting and grading and MTG or Magic clearly had better days as far as the IP as a whole is concerned and treatment by parent company. Sports is my understanding. I'm not too big into sports cards. Cam would probably have some thoughts on that, but my understanding is it's not doing nearly as well as it was, say, a year or two ago, especially on like the modern stuff. There's a lot of like where they try to force the collectability with all the like parallels and all these things they're trying to do these days. Are they even doing that in Magic now with like they're trying out like parallels and stuff like that?
There's like serialized cards, and then they just do like, rather than just do like the non-foil version and the foil version, there's the non-foil version, there's the foil version, there's the textless version, there's the alternate art version, there's the extended art version, there's the collector's box version, there's like 50 different versions of the cards, which has absolutely ruined the secondary market. Because if you had a non-foil and a foil and you wanted a foil, you go to and get a foil, right? And it's easy to price. It's easy to understand this is the only version of this card. And then that also constrains the print run, right? Of how many are actually getting printed. Now you have 10 different colorways and alternate arts and this and that and this, right? And there's
are they numbered or just various?
They have some serialized ones, but for the most part, they're not. But then it's like, well, okay, maybe in aggregate, you could say that all of the different foils equal the amount of foils that they used to produce. I don't know. I can't say for certain, but it feels like the print runs have gotten a lot bigger, and then you're expanding the different types that you have. And a part of me understands where they come from, right? Like you should have a product for every type of customer, right? And so if I really want to have textless cards or extended art cards, right? Like I'm providing you, the customer, with service or product, and you can pay a premium to get it because you can only get it in a collector's box. You can only get it in this type of a box. I completely understand that. And I actually agree with Wizards on that, but they need to rein in the print run, because if you're trying to force collectability, but then exploding the print run and exploding the amount of different types of that same card and print run that don't aggregately equal what you would have produced 3 years ago for that same product, you're just collapsing the secondary market, especially because most of this stuff is reprints. So like if a card that you had printed in 2014 only had X amount of copies, now you're reprinting it, but you're reprinting it in 15 different versions at a much larger scale. Nobody wants the one from 2014, and that card now just basically becomes worthless.
Let's say, I want to think of a what if here, and I mean, this isn't realistic, but let's say you had like Star Wars CCG cards, and some of them, like the Vader, would have like a stamp on it of like to 99. You know, there were only like 100.
Like a serialized Premier Vader.
Serialized, rares, you know, and maybe they'd be like a different color or like similar to an alt image or something, but they would be limited numbered. I mean, how would that have like exponentially like exploded the price, you know, of those rares, you know, if they had those numbered abilities? I mean, could they have gone off the deep end and had so many different varieties that people would have just been like, my mind's melting, like I'm not going to go for it? Or would that have been
my short answer to that is, if Star Wars CCG had serialized cards in 1995, they would be worth a ton of money because it would have revolutionized the way that collectible card markets work, because serialized cards didn't really come around until about 2000. Until I think there was like one set in like 1999 of like Panini basketball or something that was serialized, but it really didn't hit till about 2001. So they would have been 6 years early on the market with serializing cards. It would have completely changed everything. That said, had that been a norm, like if sports cards had been serializing cards for like a long time, you know, Star Wars comes onto the scene and decides that they want to also put serialized cards in, but then you could also just get like a regular unserialized version, like a base card, and then you could have like, you know, not refractors, but one of 10s and one of 25s and one of 50s or whatever, right? Like,
I mean, that to me, those numbered parallel sets speak my language. And I think you brought it up somewhere else, like how Topps has really nailed that. Like, speaking to the collector, I have a lot of spreadsheets now, and they're all color coordinated, and they all like iron out. Like, oh, I want all 1,500 variations of them, you know. And I'm like, this is amazing, you know. Like, this really,
I think
juicing my gears, because I don't, you know, from the playing thing, I was always bigger on the collecting of it, and the fact that they're limited is like, well, I'm one of, at most, I could be one of 99 people or 50 people or 10 people or 5 or whatever. It's insane. But at the same time, I don't know how that would affect a game that you're playing all the time. Like if it were so like Magic, right? Like you're saying they kind of went off the deep end with all this crazy parallel stuff. Like just go print run on like an unlimited set, and then you could just have one or two limited things for the people that collect it. But what blows my mind with Magic is don't they change the sets like every year, or every quarter or year or whatever they do? So like,
Yes, sort of. Most of the stuff that there's a big shift that happened in Magic, and prior to 20, I think the shift really kind of occurred right around probably like 2012, 2013. Seeds of it kind of grew in like 2010, 2011. But really, like from like prior to like maybe 2007, Magic was very much like competitive game. It was designed top down to be as strategically hard to provide excellent gameplay, right? Like if you think like chess on steroids, right? Like
yeah,
the smartest people I've ever met were, Magic
yeah,
players,
we have
right?
pieces, like
Blowing
millions of
away
pieces.
people like Carl Magnuson in chess, like in like genius intellect, because Magic was just so much more complicated as a game than anything else that humans probably have ever like created. Like some guy created an actual like
This blows my mind.
it was like I forget what the thing is called. It's not a
So you're saying
perpetual
the
motion.
top ranked Magic players are actual registered genius? Like these are up
Oh
there
yeah,
with people who got
absolutely.
rockets, lasers, and cured cancer. Like they're right up
There's
there.
if you're ever interested in reading it, there's a book called Johnny Magic and the Card Shark Kids that was produced. It's about John Finkel, and basically the premise of the book is why did all these we use the term kids, but like young men between the age of like say 16 and like maybe the early 30s, between like the late 90s through the mid 2000s, instead of going into fields like rocket science and NASA and all this type of stuff, spend their time playing games and sports betting and poker, because those are playing Magic, doing online sports betting, and
Well, it's
which
statistics like odds, right? So they're playing
are
odds.
like, if you're that smart, right? Like if you're so smart that you could be like a rocket scientist and like figure out like trajectories for like satellites to land on moons out of Saturn and stuff, like NASA's not going to pay you nearly enough money that you could get by applying your genius level intellect to sports betting. So all these guys went in to like do that stuff, and this guy wrote a book that's basically a thesis of like, why did like this whole generation of like geniuses not go into fields where we needed geniuses, but instead went to go play games? It's a really interesting book, but
That's still an issue, or has Magic dumbed itself down so they don't attract geniuses?
At the highest levels, Magic is probably the hardest game to play correctly of any game that's ever existed in human history, other than like stupid stuff like Calvin Ball, where you just make up the rules as you go along, right? But like organized play, like Magic is super hard to play well. I think it's impossible to play a game without to play a perfect game where like both players had an equal chance of winning. I'm not talking about the games where like somebody mulligans to 4 and the game's over because you play a 2-drop and your opponent never was able to block. But like if both players are playing on an even footing with their deck, where they're like, where both players keep their opening 7 and they have a good mix of lands and spells and stuff, even at the highest levels, I think it's impossible to play a perfect game.
So is this what we need to do to evaluate our geniuses of tomorrow, is to have them play Magic and sort them that way?
It's weird. It's funny. Versus system was a harder game at one point than Magic. And like that there's some decks in versus system that like even geniuses couldn't play correctly. It's just too complicated. There's so many calculations you would have to do because you can like arrange cards in ways of like blocking and reinforcing that you get like factorial exponential decision tree branches that you have to make that are just like, okay, for me to make like the correct play, I have to process like, 15 million variations of this play, right? Type stuff, right? But anyway, so
where does Star Wars CCG fall in that? Like
Star Wars CCG now in open is moving towards that because they're trying to reduce variance in games, which makes for better high-level competitive play, but doesn't make. But as I'll talk about with Magic, doesn't actually
level to get into there, right?
It doesn't make sense if you're trying to do player acquisition or if you're trying to grow your market, right? Like if
you're saying it does make more sense when we clean up the game and can't like make
you need to take variance out, or you need to add variance in, right? A new player coming in should be able to take what limited product they have, and they may lose most of the games against a better player, but variance should allow them to win at some point. As you strip variance away out of the game, the better player will win 100% of the time, right? And so if you're trying to do player acquisition or grow your market, Star Wars CCG doesn't have a market per se. Like there's no product that's actually being produced by a company that's selling it to make profit so they can continue on as a company, etc. Magic has that, right? Very much so. As Magic realized that most people don't actually want to play strategically complex games that take an hour, right? They want to play quick in and out, 10, 15 minutes, boom, boom, boom. We had a good time. Whatever, my big dragon fought your dinosaur.
But they're appealing to what? Like 10, 12, 14-year-old,
No,
kids?
I'd say most the average Magic player's age is probably about 19.
The average. But you're saying to get them into the game, you're saying they start in their teens, like late
you would
teens?
probably start. I would say most Magic players probably start around 4. You might start earlier, but you're just like collecting cards. You're putting like dumb stuff in. By the time you actually start thinking about how you want to play the game more competitively and or more seriously than just like you're making up rules with your friends, right? You're probably about 14, 15, and then usually what ends up happening is you get a spike by the time you're in college because you have a ton of free time. So you spend a lot more time dedicated to playing the games. So like average Magic player age is probably like 19 to maybe about 22, 23. And then it starts to tail off from there.
So we need to have essentially ambassadors to go play Star Wars CCG at colleges. Is what you're saying, so that you find
so what I was saying is so roughly in about 2011, they realized that Magic, most people don't want to play highly complex strategic games. They want to play fun games where they smash giant monsters into each other and laugh about it with their friends over a kitchen table. And that's where you
also be with like shorter attention spans or just the stimulation, the pull to do all these different things. Like, isn't the just general environment different too? I mean, don't get me wrong. I go to, like board game conventions and people break out these games that take up huge tables and are playing.
Twilight Imperium.
But those are all the like, we're all like the outcasts, right? Like, like not the.
No, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's that people's attention spans are shorter.
They're like, oh, I just want to play like a 20, not like an hour and a half.
I think if you look at Magic, right, like in the early days of Magic, nobody played creatures because creatures were terrible, and creatures were terrible because spells were just so good. So it's just playing like, this like really convoluted game of like timing issues and like the best way to play Magic was to like understand how like stack works and like timing things and like responses and blah blah blah. And that's not like I show up and I've got a rhinoceros with armor on it, and I'm gonna attack you, and you've got, you know, a pirate with a monkey, right? And let's battle, right? Like that's what people actually want that play Magic. They don't want like having to like understand that, you know, rule 503B says that when I, you know, snake form your Mutavault, and then I have a flash in of, you know, Scion of Una, it becomes a fairy, but it's a snake and it's a plus. Like, nobody cares about that. Like that's too much into the minutia, but that's the best way to play Magic, especially at a high level. So they added all this. They added more variance back into the game. They made creatures better. They dumbed down spells. They introduced planeswalkers, mostly as a way, because that's a completely different topic to talk about why planeswalkers exist. But and they figured out that like
It's a mystery.
I have no idea. I've never played Magic.
Oh,
I'm just
yeah.
taking it for it.
all right, side story about this. So
Like a tangent.
Brian Goldner was the CEO of Hasbro, and in the early 2000s, he wasn't the CEO yet. At that time, he was like senior product manager of legacy brands or some BS corporate title like that. And he basically got lucky that they produced Transformers the movie, right? And Transformers blew up as a movie. And Hasbro said, "Oh my God, we made $1 billion on this movie. Let's make a bunch more." And they made like a bunch more. And then they said, "Well, if we're gonna get $1 billion every year for making a Transformers movie, because toys are just doing terrible for the last 30 years, what other brands do we have that we can make movies?" That's why there was stupid stuff like Battleship the movie with Rihanna and all this kind of stuff.
Oh my God. Like why?
There was supposed to be a Monopoly movie. There was supposed to be like, if you ever want to go down a rabbit hole, go read the plot synopsis of the Monopoly movie that Hasbro pitched. Crazy, trust me. But they said, what other brands do we have that we can cash in and make movie franchises on? And they looked around and they didn't really have much. They tried everything: Battleship, Monopoly, blah, 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 whatever, right? And they looked at Magic and they were like, this would be perfect. Let's figure out how we can monetize Magic and make it into something that people will have resonant branding with, so that we can then eventually release billion-dollar blockbuster movies every summer. And that's when they pushed out Planeswalkers. And then they really pushed hard into Jace, the Planeswalker, and like they were trying.
Is that why that card was so OP? Is that why?
A little
Not
bit.
related? Okay.
Like they were really trying to push Jace as the face of Magic and set up this like storyline so that they could set up their own like characters that people would then like gravitate to, and you'd get resonant branding so that you would then be able to transform Magic into this $1 billion movie brand. And that didn't work, right? But that's why, and really Planeswalkers really started pushing into that. And that's also when Magic really pivoted into being more casual friendly. And then there was also like a perfect confluence of Commander EDH coming along at that time. And like the whole Magic scene really went sideways from where it was into this like casual player. I've got my 4 buddies and I want to, you know, it's a beer and pretzels game now. I'm going to sit around and, you know,
that's how
I've
they
got
have the commercial. Like I've seen commercials for it, and they're all like, it's a party, and like everyone's there, like, oh, cool, I'm gonna play this card. Like, yeah,
because nobody wants to actually play ridiculously hard, complicated games like that. Or the people that do, the people that do want to play that, they had already captured, and you couldn't grow the player base, which meant that you couldn't increase your market capitalization on your product lines. So you couldn't pump out more product, you couldn't sell more, you couldn't grow more. In 2012, Magic sold $200 million worth of product. In 2020, I think they crossed $1 billion like in like 2018. So in 6 years, they like moved
Wow.
the number of from like 200 million to like over $1 billion in product sales. That's hard to do without fundamentally changing the audience that's going to interact with your product. And Magic did that. So I think if you're going to bring this back to a Star Wars CCG conversation, if you want to do player acquisition, you really need to increase variance in games rather than strip variance out. And I think that there's a move to strip the variance out rather than increase variance in games. And then, like,
looked at the new virtual cards.
That's what they do. They're so
Seriously,
a lot of this isn't a rant about virtual cards. I think virtual cards are really pretty sweet. But when you do things like a lot of things do forced pile or used pile pulls so that you can get cards. So there's a lot more location pulling. There's a lot more like if you drew like a low destiny, cancel over destiny and redraw it, right? So like you're taking out certain variant items, right? Because ultimately Star Wars CCG is a D8 game, right? 0 to 7 for your destiny number, right? And each one of those would be on a D8. And so if you need to make a random thing, you're drawing a destiny, which would be the same as rolling a 8-sided dice to figure out what happens. Well, if you just eliminate 0 through 4 as an option, you're only going to roll 5, 6, 7. That cuts out a lot of variance. And same with like location. Like if you play a Premiere through Hoth game, you might go like 4 turns without ever drawing a location, right? You're activating 3/4 and drawing your cards, and then your opponent activates 3/4 and they draw their cards, and then it's your turn. You activate 3/4 and you draw 3 cards. It's their turn. They act, and you just sit there, and then finally you get another location out. But neither one of you can deploy there, right? Or like one person can deploy there, and so then like the game doesn't actually start till like turn 7, right? Well, now that has very much changed for the better because Decipher was actually pretty terrible at game design. Look at it in modern gaming. In 1995, it was fine, but if you're trying to develop the game in 2023, you would just not like everything Decipher did is like not the thing to do in a game.
Well, so have you thought about ever like what if it's the same cards and maybe game text is removed or something? Using the cards for essentially like a different game, like making a game that is different. You could essentially do it.
So I did that.
I already did that. Like wipe the text, wipe the game text, and start.
Sort of. So like the history of CCGs has long been how to fix Magic, right? So Magic has the fundamental issue with Magic is resource system, and games are, especially card games, are by and large like more than 90%, 95% of card games are really, if you reduce it down, it's a resource management game and how well you can manage your resources versus how well your opponent manages them. And Magic has a fundamental flaw in its resource system in that you can draw no lands and your opponent draws lands, or you draw too many lands and your opponent draws the perfect amount, right? Like mana flood, mana screw, right? So like the history of CCGs has all been about how do you fix Magic? So most games, especially stuff coming out from like say 1994, right after Magic, through till, I mean, even today, up through today, but really through about the late 2000s, because then CCGs kind of die, except for Magic. Like the market consolidates around Magic in about 2008, 2009. And there's really nothing that comes out until you get to like really modern stuff like Flesh and Blood, with the exception of like some like Japanese import games that come out in like the 2013, 2012, like Force of Will and Weiss Schwartz and stuff like that. But like for the most part, games are Magic clones, right? A card has a cost. a card has an attack value, a card has a defense value, and then it does something. A bunch of other stuff is extraneous for that specific game, like a destiny number or a forfeit number in terms of Star Wars. But if you look at a game, right, like, so Star Wars, it has a deploy cost. That's the cost of resources that it costs to bring it into play. It has a power stat, it has a defense stat, and it does something that affects the game board, right? Lord of the Rings does the same thing. There's a cost, there's a power, there's a defense, and it does something. Versus system, there's a cost, there's a power, there's a defense, it does something. Like almost universally, most games have that functionality built into it. So I went through like, I don't know, 75 different CCGs, and I compiled all of my favorite cards from all of them and stripped away all the like extraneous rules stuff, and then basically built it within the framework of the Spoils, which the Spoils is the greatest card game that ever was produced. And I built it within the framework of the Spoils, but it used all of the history of CCGs together and combined. And I built a cube, and you could draft it. It's super fun, man. It's like the greatest
Do
game.
you have like an experimental game you made that you've tested this out with other people or something?
Yeah, I mean, I played with my friends. We drafted it, and I like, you play it roughly based on the way you play the Spoils, plus some like formation stuff from Versus system, and then a resource system of like face up, face down stuff, and otherwise it's like attack and defense, and then pull in like certain aspects from other games that are like, that was a really good game design, like this one thing, like I'm going to pull that in and make it. So like it kind of made my own CCG using all the existing CCGs.
Indie CCG. We gotta see
that. The greatest CCG card ever made was from the Monty Python game. It's called Get On With It. The card says, if your opponent's taking more than 10 seconds to make a decision, you can play Get On With It for free, and it ends their turn and it becomes your turn.
That would be a Monty Python card.
So yeah, there you go.
You have to have it in your hand, I guess, to play it.
But then your opponent's sitting there thinking about what they're going to attack with, and you're like, get on with it, and then it's the end of their turn. It's so fun.
Oh my god, that is a much needed card in a lot of games.
Yeah.
They have that one in Hearthstone. Is it Nesdormu or whatever, the dragon? I think there's a card that does that, but that causes all sorts of other problems with online format. Apparently, there are like bugs that make the other person's turn like not ever play and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I guess that's an online special.
It's kind of a dick card. I mean,
It's all good.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'd love to play that. I'd love to try that.
But I just wanted to touch on the issue of reducing variance in the games, because I know it gets a little complicated. Like, because with Star Wars CCG, right? Like, if you didn't have all those like pull cards or those acceleration cards, you'd end up with just a bunch of turns where you're just kind of sitting there like, all right, I'm going to try and draw something. So on one hand, like, if you were to play something like Magic Arena, I mean, yeah, you do have the fundamental problem still of like getting mana flooded or mana screwed, but they really got the curve. Like, I mean, as long as you make a fairly normal deck, like it's easy to make somewhat standard, like curved decks. So is there just kind of like a competing element of trying to like work with the game design of the mid 90s? Like, you kind of do need to speed it up if you're going to try to get players. But on the other hand, if you do streamline it too much, like you end up where the best player always wins. And then also like things where you end up with like, this is a deck, like there are only so many, like you're always going to have sort of meta decks, but you might end up being like, well, this is like the deck you have to play because we've just optimized everything.
I think the PC does a good job of pushing errata when that type of stuff happens. And there's not so many Star Wars tournaments where like there's a billion Magic tournaments. So if Wizards came out and it's like effective this set release, these cards are errataed, that would be an issue. The other thing is Star Wars is a non-rotating game, right? So like if there's really that big of a problem that even like errata, or I mean at that point you would step in and do bannings, but historically, so Decipher Decipher's only ever banned. I mean, well, I guess they banned cards in Lord of the Rings. There's no banned cards in Star Wars. There was one official banned card in Star Trek.
Well, for most of the things, they managed to like shield them out, right? That was kind of the way they like soft banned them, like most of the problematic things at the time.
Yeah, well, yes, most of the negative play experience stuff's been shielded, which is fine.
Yeah.
It's just like a cognitive load on new players needing to understand how that works rather than just banning things. If you just banned things and said, this is the deck format construction rules, you can play every card except for these 22 cards. That's pretty straightforward to understand.
Right.
Whereas if you then say every card's legal, you have essentially a sideboard that you can use, and you can play 4 cards per game. There's other cards that let you play things from under there, other shields, and each shield does something different depending on a different matchup. And like these 22 or 23 cards that are affected by the cards that shield shut down, Revolution and Beggar and Frozen Assets and A Dangerous Time and Responsibility Command and all this like really dumb, terrible Decipher design. Well, you could play them, but if you play them, I'm just going to play this one card that I can play for free basically at any time that I have top level action, and it's just going to shut you down. That's not a really great experience for a new player either. And then as a new player coming in, it's like, well, do I need to play this card? When do I play this card? When do I do that? And when you really boil down shields, there's about 25, 27 shields per side. And like most of them deal with either shutting down negative play experience cards or stopping really dumb episode 1 stuff.
So back to the what if question.
Sorry.
So Decipher doesn't stop printing cards in 2001. They keep it. Do they continue to make cards that try and fix other things, or do they end up revamping the game, making it 2.0, by having to try and fix all this stuff, given all the other games that could be coming out and fixing these problems moving forward?
So both things happen, right? Decipher did release shields. Right,
but like
because they were in Reflections 3, they would have continued to make shields, and they
so
also
Attack of the Clones, Count Dooku, all this like fighting.
Yeah, they would have made a second edition inevitably. I mean, they were trying to do that with episode 1 stuff, like with Tatooine release. There was a whole episode 1 format. There was a whole episode like tournament format, tournament structure. Like they were really trying to get away from the legacy Star Wars stuff because it just got. I mean, there was a lot of cards. Granted, most of the stuff Decipher put out is absolute garbage as far as cards go for tournament play, right? Out of the maybe.
Like they basically serve one purpose against another card, really, and if that card's not on the opposing deck,
sort of. I mean, if you for example, card Sorry About the Mess. It's a great card because you can fire a weapon during your control phase. You break one of the fundamental rules of the game, which is you could only fire a weapon during battle phase. So you can fire it during your control phase. Gets rid of undercover spies, or like you are beaten. You can spend 2 force if you have a lightsaber. The other character can't move or battle and does some other stuff, right? Like these are just fundamentally good cards because they like stop what your opponent's trying to do. If you look at the overall Decipher run, even with episode 1, if you exclude episode 1, there's probably only about maybe like 300 to 350 cards that were ever printed per side that would, like, if you were going to try and play like at a high level tournament play, that would even be worthwhile to look at and include. Most of what Decipher printed is not tournament playable. It's just absolute garbage stuff that's like unreal why you would ever put it into your deck. Even with episode 1 stuff, you might only get up to maybe about 475. cards that reasonably would be included. Now, of course, any card could be included. Most cards are just terrible. Like,
So do you
really
think that's because they were like, okay, we're releasing a new theme and we want to get at least, 100, 20, give or take cards in the set. I need, design, go figure out some cards to make. They're like, okay, well, we figured out maybe 20 or 30 like solid text cards, and the rest are like kind of, I don't know, we got to invent this or figure something else on the fly. And, or, what, how does that, how does that like shape out? I mean, did they just throw up on the wall like, yeah, this will work, just throw it out? Or were they like, how much play testing went into this and how much like thought went into that? Or was it just like,
so there was a good amount of play testing done on all the cards. Obviously, if you look at play testing that happens now, especially what the PC does is play testing, the PC is much more rigorous with their play testing, which is why they probably produce overall better cards, more balanced cards, more cards that are like playable, more cards that don't lead to like unnecessary blowouts. Like, it's easy to get blown out in Premiere to A New Hope. Like, you can just end the game sometimes. You're just like done, right? And turn 4 and it's the end of the game. But like, Decipher did spend a lot of time playtesting cards, and towards the end they would bring in high level tournament players to be playtesters, which is why you also see the sets overall get better as you go on, as far as like the cards that are getting put into them and what the cards do.
even though there ends up being some power creep, right? Later, as some cards get really powerful.
Some of the power creep is just because they need to sell packs, right? It's very easy to just play Premier Vader for the rest of time. It's a good card. It's a really good card, right? But if you want to sell packs, you're going to put Lord Vader, and he's going to be power +1, and he's going to add 1 to his weapon destiny draws, and it's going to have extra defense value when he's got his lightsaber, and he's got more immunity to attrition, and so now I need to get Lord Vader. Well, how do I get Lord Vader? Well, I buy packs, right? I mean, it's a company, it's a business at the end of the day. So they're going to power creep inevitably. I think Magic does a really good job at balancing some power creep, right? Because they're able to shift things between, like, if creatures are too powerful now, we can make enchantments that nerf what creatures are doing, and then with enchantments are getting better, then we can make creatures better, make planeswalkers that do. So Magic has a much better way of looking at power creep. They just power creep because they want to sell packs. They don't really care, and they just ban things. But like, if Magic really wanted to, they could balance things out a lot better than, say, something like Star Wars could. But yeah, like, playtesting's fine. I think the way that they would develop decks is, especially later sets, you have like a theme you want to accomplish, right? So if you look at Coruscant, we're going to be Star Wars, they had a theme for every set, right? You have Jabba's Palace and you have Dagobah. So in Jabba's Palace, we're focusing on all the stuff that's going on in Jabba's Palace. So it's easy to build this set, right? Like, we need to get a card for every single character that you could possibly imagine, right? And we need to have some interrupts that deal with this character and this character and this type of character, and do this thing, and we need to have a rank, and like, we need to make it thematically or flavorfully like a movie, right? So there needs to be a Rancor, and there needs to be the Rancor keeper, and we need to be able to like send somebody down a trapdoor, so let's make a trapdoor card. So it's very top-down design, as opposed to, like, say, more like exploratory design that you would get in like a different type of game. So Star Wars is very thematically top down, which, and I mean, I guess Decipher understood what they were putting out, right? Like, the best cards are like, Darth Vader is like the best dark side character, right? Because everybody wants to play Darth Vader, right? And Darth Vader needs to be powerful. So when you play Darth Vader, he needs to do something powerful when he's in play, right? So we're going to do that. Or Obi-Wan needs to be a balanced Vader and he needs to be powerful. Or, Jedi Luke needs to be like, but like Cantina Alien B from off screen over here, like they're just going to do something quirky, right? So it's not like a powerful thing. So like, I think Decipher really understood what the game should be. They just made it too hard to get Darth Vader, right? Like, I don't think they really understood the print runs of things, and as well as they probably should have. We'll say, like, if you have
Well, let's say,
average,
but that the counterpoint though, I mean, if you just made decks where everything was equal to get and every could play the same, like.
but I think Lord of the Rings did this
like
much
add
better,
another-
right? Like, there was a rare version and a common version of Legolas or Aragorn, right? So like the rare version's probably better, but you could make the common version also equally playable. It's just doing something fundamentally different, right? So like, so Premier Vader could still add 3 to power of anything he pilots, and each of your battle destiny draws are +1, and he adds 4 to power if he's on his custom tie, and 3 to maneuver, and he's immune to attrition less than 5. You could make a common version of Vader that might be just as good to play. He might just be doing something different, right? When Darth Vader is present with another Imperial leader at he can do something with stormtroopers over here and blah, blah, blah. And like, you could have designed a card and then people could have got a Vader and they could have played with that Vader and even done well with it in a gameplay setting, building a deck around that. They could have also got the rare Vader who does maybe something a little bit better, right? But he might be just doing something different. And Lord of the Rings really nailed that perfectly in what they did, right? Like Aragorn, Ranger of the North from Fellowship of the Rings, he can exert himself to become defender +X for each exertion, right? And so he's like just really good at being a machine and taking and fighting like Urukai, right? But like Aragorn in Exile, which was the common version from the starter deck, he can once per turn heal a companion that has the Aragorn signet and blah 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 something or other, right? And so like they're fundamentally different cards, but they're both equally playable.
Yeah. Well, because Star Wars CCG had that 2-player Vader, and that's like
That thing's
nobody wants to play that.
That thing's so bad.
Exactly. And the 2-player Luke, same story, and the Chewie and Leia, and like.
But I think that's where Decipher, when I say like I don't know if Decipher really understood the print run stuff of that, is like they don't want to release something like, I think they didn't want to release a Luke or a Vader that was going to be too good, because then people wouldn't buy as many packs to get the like actual rare one Vader and Luke Skywalker and stuff, because I could just buy this Parker Brothers playset for probably $19.99, and and I'd get a Vader and a Luke that's legitimately a good card, and I can build that. Like, what incentive do I really have to go buy 4 cases of boosters so I can get 4 Darth Vaders for my tournament deck, right? So I think they went like to the extreme on not necessarily collectability, but on like trying to do market capitalization to get people to buy booster packs. And they probably shouldn't have swung that hard in that direction. They should have gone something a little bit more moderate.
I don't know. For me, it worked as a kid. Like I always saw the Vader in the mall, in the big screw down case, and I always wanted one so bad, and it was so darn hard to pull that thing.
Yeah, no, it's great for that. But if you wanted to actually play the game, you needed probably a minimum of 4 Darth Vaders, right? So like you're pricing people out of the game to start. If you make it that difficult to get that type of a card, whereas they could have not gone as they shouldn't have swung that hard. They could have gone a little bit more moderate with where they were going. Still made a Vader that like people would be like, wow, that Vader's sweet. Oh man, I wish I had that Darth Vader. He'd be so good in my deck. Like he's so hard to get out of the packs. Like that's the card I want. I still can sit down to the table with my Vader, because if you're going to play Star Wars, like when you sit down, when I play Star Wars, I want to play Luke, I want to play Vader, I want to play Boba Fett, I want to play Obi-Wan and Han, right? Like, I don't want to play Dice Ibegon and Mayo and, you know, Danica Jericho. Like,
AFC.
I just don't care about, right? Like, that's not Star Wars to me. I want to play with the characters that I like love, right? And I think Decipher really missed on that.
So do you think something like a Flesh and Blood model is a lot better for something like, I mean, granted, that's like a game that came out in like when you're 2020 or so they had a lot of learning.
Yeah, I mean, they learned the lesson of that. I mean, Decipher learned that lesson by the time they got to even Star Trek 2.0 in 2002. Actually, Decipher learned that lesson in Star Wars. That's why EPPs were probably like honestly, EPPs I feel like are the thing that actually saved Star Wars. Right? Like, the combination of, because like Special Edition had a bunch of problems. They had to do all this errata on stuff like operatives and droid merchant, hidden base, and some of the objectives are just god awful, like rescue the princess and Dantooine base operations. Or, you know, I'm not talking about virtual versions, like original versions. They're just unplayable. Like, they're so bad, it's impossible to flip them. They're just they're absolute, you might as well just light them on fire, that you get more entertainment value out of do that. But like, yeah, like the Special Edition had like a bunch of problems. The Special Edition did a lot towards modernizing the game, and you could almost think of it as like Star Wars 2.0 sort of. But like, I feel like EPPs were the thing. Like Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, and Ben Kenobi were still hard to get. There wasn't a Luke. The Han was TK422. I mean, they just had Captain Han out of Cloud City, but he had all these deployment restrictions. And like, the Leia that was released in Special Edition was the one that's like terrible, where she's at a rebel base, like rebel troopers or power +1 or something. It's like, this card is stupid, you know. Like, the Cloud City Leia was terrible, the Jabba's Palace Leia was terrible, Premier Leia is terrible. Like, there's no good Leia up until EPP Leia comes out, right? And, you know, I just like, Vader was still hard to get. You still needed 6 copies of Vader because Hunt Down needed 6 of them. You know, Boba Fett really wasn't a good card. Like, Han was good. Captain Han was good. But original Premier Han is terrible. You know, Luke was fine, but Luke only just gotten Son of Skywalker, and he could only go to Dagobah, and who cares about being on Dagobah, right? It wasn't until Cloud City came out. So like, you still had to use all the premier mains basically for the first 3 years of the game. EPP really saved that because it also combined weapons, so it brought in like more battling and elements like that. Like, I think if they had never gone with EPPs and just had like kept on keeping on, the game would have been a lot worse, for sure.
Well, they made them to sell more packs, but in doing so, they helped balance the game or make it more exciting, because those cards are still played.
Yeah,
like people still use those.
Really good. Yeah, they're really good,
and they look cool too. So I always liked those boxes. I was like, ooh, I want to open these. I remember I think I was in middle school or something. It was my birthday, and like, I had a bunch of friends over, and my best friend bought me a Special Edition booster pack, which I think it was new at the time. And I opened it in front of everybody. First pack, it was Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith. And he was like, what? He's like, I just gave that to you. Some like $4 pack, $3 pack. I was like, oh, I think this is the best card.
Yeah. Still a good card.
Like, I didn't know. I was like, I didn't have a list. I was like, this is a nice card. I still have that card. Well, so I was listening to one of the more recent videos I was listening to you guys was on the Lorcana stuff, which I have been following from the beginning. And I was like, okay, yeah, this has been going pretty crazy. And Jamie had asked me at one point, like, oh, what's the hottest thing? I was like, apparently Lorcana. He's like, okay, I'm going to go buy them all. I was like, okay. So I bought them and then shipped them over to him. And then I've been following the price ever since. And like, the PSA 10s of the Lorcana D23 set, holy sweet Jesus. Like, you could buy a luxury car for less than what people are listing them for. So that is blown up.
Yeah, I don't know how much of it's actually like selling.
I think the selling is slow, but I don't think people are going to budge on the price. My concern would be once they print the non-D23 same versions of those cards when the first chapter comes out? Are people going to care that it's going to say D23 in the bottom? Or are they just going to be happy to have the card? Yes, some people will, but like, are you still going to get that high number? I don't know. If it were me and I had those, I'd probably get out of them and just take the 10,000% return on it. Like winning is still winning. I don't know if it's going to jump
I
that
have
much.
my set upstairs. I'm never going to sell it.
Yeah, I know. I figured you had some, but I was like,
I mean, but that's
amazing.
I'm like a black hole collector. Right? Like nothing ever leaves my grasp once I have it.
I'm usually the same way, but if I have an extra of something, and like for instance, like my Star Wars CCG sets, like I would say I have at least 1.5 sets of everything because I have the set, but then I'm like opening random packs. Maybe there's some bulk lots here or there, and I'm like, I guess I could start another set, and then if I finish it, I could sell it. Like I've sold Jabba's Palace at least 2 or 3 times, and I still have 3 complete sets, So like,
yeah, I mean, I'll sell stuff when it it seems worthwhile to sell it, but I don't know, man. I'm actually pretty hyped about Lorcana.
I'm curious to see how what happens with that when that drops.
Well, like when they first announced it, right? And I think we went over this in one of the videos with Matt. When they first announced it, they didn't have any pictures of cards or anything. I was like, there's no way. Like this game is just dead on arrival. Like every other CCG that's ever come out, right? That's not Star Wars or Marvel.
Press releases, hypes, magazine articles.
Then it comes out and it's like, wow, these cards actually look really good. But then they didn't do anything with it for a long time. For maybe a week from D23 or the day before D23 when the first IGN article launched till maybe a week afterwards. Man, Lorcana was just the hottest thing, right? I had people all over all different social media feeds climbing out of the woodwork. Anybody at D23? Who's at D23, right? It's everybody wanted it. But then Ravensburger just didn't capitalize on that at all. They just tight-lipped, no news, no social, no nothing for forever. And then Matt and I put out this video that was basically calling them out. What is Ravensburger doing? You need to hire a social media manager.
Did you watch other Lorcana videos or people talking about it prior to doing that?
Most of them are really terrible. I can't get through them. They're pretty cringy, to be honest with you. There's a couple people that I think are decently entertaining, but I don't know. I don't really watch other
Pokemon. Is it going to be what kids are going to be playing now in the the cafeteria? Forget Pokemon. I want to play Disney.
No, absolutely not.
Or is this going to be an adult collector sort of fantasy play? I'd be curious to play the game to see if it's something that I'm okay, this is actually a good game, or if I'm okay, the art's neat, but the game is stupid,
So my real struggle anymore. I have 2 struggles with gaming.
Because they could print the crap out of that product. They're look,
that's fine. I don't mind that, right? But I guess my real 2 big struggles with gaming is one, finding time to game. Right, I have a 4-year-old at home that when I work a regular job, I leave my house 8, get to work at 9 o'clock. I work till 5:30. I have I don't get the luxury of working from home. My office requires me to be into work. All right, so I can't work from home, which sucks. So I have a commute both ways. I get home, I eat dinner. My 4-year-old wants to play with me. We play, I give him a bath, get him to read him a story, get him to sleep. It's 9 o'clock at night. That's when I can actually do anything. But I got to be up and go to work the next day. So I'm not staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning. And then on weekends, that's family time, right? So my wife, she works 3 days a week. My son goes to school those same 3 days. So 4 days out of the week, she's with him. all the time. So if I'm just like, oh, hey, I'm going to knock off and go to a card tournament, you can stay with him all day again. It's like, really? Like that's not going to fly. Unless it's like some like really, once a year, I might be able to pull that off. But if I'm going to be like, go to a Friday night Lorcana event, not right? But that's not going to go anywhere other than me eating my words. The other thing, so that's one thing, right? Like I don't have time to sit down and game. Like I can do it on my phone, while I'm sitting on some boring Zoom call at work or with my camera off, right? I can play on Gem then, or like after 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, I might play a couple games. That's fine. But like the other thing is, I just don't want to go to a game store and sit down with a bunch of randoms at a table and play. Like, I don't think that they're going to take the game as seriously as like I'm a very competitive person when it comes to playing the game. Like I want to play the most optimized, perfect list. Like I'm there to play the game perfectly. Like the thing that drives me to play games is to beat my opponent, and that's it. That's the only thing I want to do, right? Just make my opponent lose. And like I'm not there. Like I don't care if I have fun. The fun that I have is making my opponent lose the game. Right. I don't care about throwing the Death Star or anything like that. Right. Like, I'm there to win, and I'm going to play the most perfectly optimized deck that I can. So I don't want to like sit down a bunch of randoms because one, I don't think that it's going to be challenging. Right. I'd rather just play people that I already know are good and play against good players than randoms at Thursday night draft. And then like two, like, I don't know. I mean, game stores, like, man, the people that go into game stores are just weird.
Well, yeah.
I feel attacked.
The people that I see, like, I'll go in. There's a game store a mile away from me. I'll go in for random stuff, mostly like storage boxes. Because I always end up with this, like, I should order these on Amazon and get them for a lot cheaper, but I need it right now. So I'm going to go pay $1.50 more to buy this box because I don't really care, right? So I'm going to go, every time I go in there, it's just like, why am I here?
Well, they're either playing Warhammer or Magic, right? There's some big Warhammer.
They're playing Magic or Pokemon. Not so much Warhammer at that store, but yeah, I mean, same thing, right? Like, and I'm always just like, why am I here? Like, I went to like the last Magic pre-release I went to, I'm never going back to a Magic tournament at a local game store again in my life. Like I just was like, this is awful. like
is it like I'm
gonna go 4-0 to win 2 packs. Like I don't really care about that. Like I'll just wait a week to get the cards. Like I'm not like, oh my god, I gotta get the cards to put in my EDH deck. Like I don't care about that stuff at all. It's not what I'm there for. I want to play, and just like the people that you play against and the people that it's like, I don't want anything to do with any of these people. Please go away. Right. And so like, I'm not going to play Lorcana somewhere. They're probably not. This is going to be probably strictly a collector's item for me.
Yeah. I don't know.
I like the characters for the most part.
I know what you're saying. I personally haven't played in board game stores. The stuff I have played has been at larger, like dedicated strategy, board game halls or something where everyone's there to play seriously for like hours games, like really intelligent games, like not playing Battleship or Monopoly. Like they want to play the more obscure stuff, the more like deep strategy. And I like those deep strategy games. I don't want like roll the dice, like, oh, you lose the game or they get a crazy event. Like I want it to be a more fulfilling game, but I do kind of I know what you're saying. I haven't played Magic and
the other thing with Lorcana is it's 8+, so like Magic I think is 13+. So this is going to be a similar game. It's going to be a similar game, but I think Lorcana is going to skew a little bit younger. What am I going to do?
Do you know what Pokemon is?
What am I going to do? Go to a game store and play against like 12-year-olds? Like, come on. Like, this is not going to be hard.
Teach him to grow up real quick.
Watch Lorcana's like really really advanced. Like it's hard.
That'd be amazing. That would be absolutely amazing.
Like,
I would
easy
love that.
to
I would
learn,
play.
hard
I
to
would try to
master.
qualify for like world champion. Like I hope world championships is at like Disney and you get to like,
Oh yeah, no
you
doubt.
know, like that would be amazing. Like get a free trip to Disney and then go see Galaxy's Edge and, you know, go to Epcot and all that stuff. Like that would be great. I would love that. I would play in like competitive events if there was like a pro tour, like Grand Prix circuit. Like I would actually try to do that, especially if you could win like real prize money. I'm not talking about like, you know, first place gets $1,200. Like my plane ticket's going to cost more than that to get there. I'm not spending a whole week to fly to Las Vegas to try to grind out $1,200. Like I
Or
could
like
sell,
a 5-day event or something.
yeah, like my EV is so low going to that like I'm gonna waste my time. But if there's like a real like legitimate prize money up there, like you know, like $1 million purses and stuff, yeah, I'm in. I'm
Like World Series of Poker level stuff. Like,
no, I mean like a Magic Pro Tour easily is like then isn't like the calling for Flesh and Blood like $500,000 or something like that. I think Magic is like $1 million a Pro Tour or something paid out across like you know X amount of things, but like first place gets like 50 grand or something like that. Like okay, I'll try to go grind out competitive Lorcana. I'll go beat up, you know, 12-year-olds at my local event so that I can, you know.
they probably have age brackets to keep it, you know, in line. My
Yeah, but I
dream,
mean, like, I would definitely try to qualify for like a world championships or something, right? Because that would also just be like a good vacation to like I could that'd be an easy sell, right? Like, hey, I qualified for this tournament. Let's go down to Orlando and go to Disney where they're holding the world championships. You guys can go enjoy Mickey's Toontown. I'm gonna go sit in a conference room, play kind of cards.
my dream would be a little different. I would rather go to like a large Star Wars convention or you know, card convention with a table and be selling like, you know, different Star Wars cards, and it could be across different things. It could be Star Wars CCG, could be slabs, could be, you know, extra stuff I have, and just use it to like strike conversations with other collectors, maybe trade stuff, you know, maybe see to buy stuff on the floor. But I feel like that would be really cool. And you can only do that at like either a bit large Star Wars convention or like a large card convention. Because if you went to like a small local card convention, like that's probably a little too niche to really gain much traction there. You'd have to go to something on a larger scale. But I would love to do that, or even go in with somebody else to like split a table or something and list stuff and buy, sell, trade.
Well, we should since you
That would
live like 2 miles from my house, we should plan on going May 21st and 22nd. There's the Philly Non-Sport Card Show. It's like one of the largest non-sport card shows in the country.
Oh, I don't think I saw that. I get PSA magazine. They share some like
And
card.
it's
going on.
right at the King of Prussia Mall.
Oh yeah, count me in for that.
Yeah, let me know. I'll try and take a day. If we'll go up there. They usually do like a lot of different like exclusives, like Marvel Masterpieces 2016 had a special Philly show promo that Joe Jusko did, and then it's like a Spider-Man, which Spider-Man's a tier 4 card, so it's like really hard to get.
Would you bring cards that you'd intended to like trade, sell, or
Yeah.
whatever?
Yeah, probably. I mean, most of my stuff that I have, I don't. If I want something, I'm just
no. I mean, not necessarily you, but like, is that what people do? Like, they bring
yeah. It's basically a big card show, right? It's buying and selling, but it's not sports themed. You're gonna find a ton of just like terrible 80s and 90s wax stuff, Dick Tracy cards and Desert Storm cards and all that kind of.
I have Desert Storm cards. They're not mine, but I have them. and they're probably worth nothing, but I'd be happy to sell them to somebody for $10.
Absolutely worth nothing. You'll find a bunch of that, but you'll also find a bunch of like people with like really high end stuff. I'm sure you'll find Star Wars stuff like.
I have like, for instance, like stacks of like numbered Topps parallel cards that these are all extras, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure you can bring all that stuff, and you go in, walk the floor, figure out who's buying and selling Star Wars stuff. Then you go up to them and you can, be like, hey, trading and blah, blah, and you're just trying to trade or buy or something. Like, yeah, it's really big in non-sport world.
Yeah, I mean, with post-COVID and all that stuff, like now I've been trying to look for different stuff. I mean,
looking at their page, their banner is Star Trek, Superman, Cyclops, and Luke Skywalker. So, I'm sure you'll find some non-sport stuff. Yeah, and it's like 20 minutes away from us. It's like the biggest non-sport convention in the country.
For instance, if I get to watch Andy delete some kids in Lorcana, I might.
If you are playing world-class Lorcana, I would watch that. Like, as some 12-year-old runs off crying, and you're like, "Yes, I crushed it."
My Ariel deck and Ariel and Beast tag team. You're terrible.
You have to think of some good trash.
Like, are they going to release like the instructions on how to play the game prior to it dropping, or is it one of those things you got?
I'm sure they'll release something like that in spring that'll go over like gameplay mechanics and stuff. I mean,
they haven't released much now. I mean,
they haven't, but I mean, you can also just read the cards and be like, I've played one game of Magic in my life. I understand what this card does.
But would an 8-year-old have played all that Magic to know that?
No, but I could read a card and be like, I understand exactly what this card is supposed to do and how it's going to work in a game. Because like the head designer of Lorcana was like, I guess he worked for Wizards doing like Kaijudo, which was like a game that went absolutely nowhere. And then like he like was on design and development of like a couple of like Magic sets that were like okay sets. It's like, okay, you can make like how to like design a game, I guess, but it's basically just looks like a Magic clone.
Well, we'll just have to wait and see. Nobody really knows. I mean, I was too like dismissive of like, like why do I want to jump on this bandwagon? Like, last thing I need is to diversify my card portfolio like even more. I'm like, I need to just reel it in, right? Like, there comes a point where you're like, am I going too wide and not deep? Like, I'd rather go deep. So that's why I'm like, all right, maybe it'll go to the moon. Maybe I missed it, but I'm still not gonna start jumping into like different products that far.
Yeah, I mean, I've diversified to the point that I need to reel it back in myself, which I've been trying to do, but markets are
not favorable for it. Yeah, you're not going to get money for it right now.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm just trying to, focus on the things that I actually am interested in. But this was a philosophical question that I had posed to Matt. We were going to make a video about it, but it was basically like, what do you do with collecting when you've reached a point in collecting where you just can't collect the thing that you want to collect? Because it's like the only thing that I collect for Star Wars CCG anymore is I go onto Google Images and save pictures of things that I'll never get because they don't exist anywhere. They're lost to time. And like there's the
Reflections Gold stuff or these obscure miscut error things, or
sure, if it comes up, I will go out and figure out a way to get it, right? But it just doesn't come up, right? There hasn't been a Reflections Gold card sold in 18 months, right? And prior to me going deep on Reflections Gold for a year, there probably hadn't been a Reflections Gold card sold in 10 years. And to be honest, there's probably not going to be a Reflections Gold card sold for 10 years. Unless Cameron decides
you
to
never
sell
know.
this.
I mean, sometimes people are just desperate for the money. I mean, you have to be in a bad spot to want to have to get rid of a card like
I mean,
that.
there's only like 10 left in the world that I don't own. So unless one of the like 4 people that I know that owns the Reflections Gold card is going to sell it, they're not going to, right? Like the people that own them is like Cameron Casey, who is like a lawyer in New York City. Brian Terwilliger, who's like a TV producer for like WWE, and like Cameron. Like, so I guess if one of those guys is like hard up for cash, which doesn't really seem like any of those guys are going to be hard up for cash anytime soon, like I don't think there's going to be Reflections Gold card sold until long time from now. So like, but like, yeah, if it comes up, I will try to figure out how to get it. But like, there's basically nothing more that I need.
Well, but let's think about like, so in my mind, let's say I did have one and somebody else had, 18 or 19 or like a bunch, right? And they were trying to complete the set. Yes, I like having that card, but part of me is also like, well, for the sake of preserving like the history, the game, all that, I actually don't feel that bad, selling that card to the person who has the most to preserve all of them in one place where like, for the sake of the game history, whatever, I feel like it's a good steward, it's a good place to be.
I think you should be my advocate to call Cameron and tell Cameron to sell me this.
No, but like, if I wanted to sell my collection, like even if it's my Star Wars CCG, my regular stuff, like my core set, like I want to keep that forever, right? But if I had to sell it, I would want it to go to somebody who really felt like they really valued it and like this was going to like a good place or building upon an already established collector, historian of the game that I'm like, okay, this is in a good place. I can do that, as opposed to just like, throw it on eBay, fuck it, like whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean that'll happen, but good luck. So whenever that eventually happens, right? It's just never gonna. So basically, the question was like, nothing really is coming that is like, oh, I need to get this for my collection because it's just so rare, or one of them in the world, or maybe there's a bunch in the world and they're just hidden, lost to time forever. That like, yeah, sure, if it comes up, I'll figure out how to get it. But otherwise, it's the collection's complete. There's nothing more that's going to come up. So where do you go? What do you do? And really, it's move on to other things. So
yeah, I mean, I know Matt mentioned autographs, right? Autographs of people in the cards and stuff. That's not a bad thing. I don't collect Star Wars CCG autographs, but I do have autographs from a few different top sets, and some of them aren't like, people of value. They're just kind of random oddball stuff, but it's kind of cool.
I'm like, yeah, I mean, I would want to do like I don't want. So one, I don't care about anything episode 1, or especially not sequels. I don't have any desire for any of that stuff. I enjoy the TV shows. I enjoy the Clone Wars episodes and stuff like that. But like, I don't really want an autograph of like a voice actor, right? So like,
I can tell you they're not expensive. Like I got some of these for like $6. Like, there's not much value to them. It's more of a like.
Sure. So, but if I'm gonna get an autograph, like I want Harrison Ford, I want Mark Hamill, I want Carrie Fisher, right? I mean, Harrison Ford is like $1,000 or like $800 for a signature. Yeah. I'm just no thanks. I'm good. Like,
if I pull it, I'll be happy to have it. But yeah,
sure. I would love to pull like I would love. You know what I really wish top Star Wars did? I saw this super sick basketball card that was a booklet card that was like a four-fold booklet that came out, and it had like it had patches of all those players, and it was like, I mean, the card probably is it's a one of one. It's probably like $2 million because it was like Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, and then it went to like mid '90s where it was like whoever was it, like Allen Iverson, or I guess he was more like 2000.
Wait, these were autographed too?
So
Or
it
just
was autographs and patches in a 4-fold out booklet. It was super sick, man. That looked so great. And I'm not really like a sports card person. Like
yeah,
I can enjoy them, but and like I like from like a collectible standpoint, like I can understand like something is awesome. That was awesome. And I was like, man, how sick would it be if there was a Star Wars booklet that was like Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, David Prowse.
But they have stuff like that. I mean, Topps releases dual and triple autograph cards.
Not dual and triple. I'm talking about a 4-page booklet that's like 12 autos. That would be so sick.
12 autos. Yeah, but I've seen in like autograph and sports stores, like you can get, like a Star Wars poster signed by like, 8 people for like
I
$1,500.
don't want a poster. Posters suck. I hate posters and I hate
But if you
uncut.
wanted an auto,
Even with an auto, they're so unwieldy. You can't store them anywhere. You can't really display them very well. Like there's not enough wall real estate anywhere to hang up like posters and stuff. What am I going to put in my living room? Like, no, thank you. Right? Like,
let's go into the basement or your man cave or office. Like that's about it.
Right. Like I have so like one wall I still have to build it because it's sitting in boxes downstairs and I haven't had the time to sit down and actually build it, but I have a 8-foot by 7-foot by like 2-foot deep custom display cabinet for my Star Wars CCG collection that's going to get put together, and it's basically
putting a custom CCG cabinet together.
Yeah, so I ordered it from Case, which is, I mean, they're not prefabricated; they're custom made, custom built. They're bespoke display cabinets. So it's like museum grade glass and all this stuff. Like, can't wait to.
Wait, I'm trying to imagine this. So you're trying to display what, like entire sets, like sealed product,
all my sealed product and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay.
also like stuff. So I'm gonna like put all this together. So that's gonna be one wall, and then the other wall is all my bookcases. I have, I don't know, probably 1,000 books sitting there. It's mostly like RPG books and comics and trades and like limited edition stuff. I have a huge Star Wars book collection. Oh, where the hell am I gonna put a poster? Like,
well, Mark's got real estate
that I would drive all over, but I'm not allowed to, so I don't get sunlight that comes in because I don't want UV rays to damage anything. And the other wall is a closet which is full of bulk. I mean, like 500,000 cards sitting in this closet that I can't go through, and a door. Like, where am I going to hang a poster? Come on. I hate posters. Posters are terrible. The worst collectible of all time. I can't stand posters. I actually want to sell the uncut sheets that I have. It's like I just don't want to deal with them.
Well, I have 2 cut sheets framed, but they do take up a lot of space. And
what I really want to do, but I feel bad about doing it, and so I don't ever end up doing it. I really want to see them and get like crazy cuts, but no, like I know a guy who will get them like professionally cut
in square cut.
No, they'd be rounded, but I wouldn't get them. Come on, I don't need to cut a Reflections 3 sheet to get a Boba Fett bounty hunter. Like, that's not what I want. I want like crazy miscuts made out of it and stuff like that. But,
well, you could miscut it, cut it down the middle.
Nah, that's good. So they'll just stay cut. They'll just stay as full full uncut sheets because I don't want to necessarily do that. But
Mm.
yeah, I hate posters and all that stuff. So no, I don't want a poster with 8 people that signed it. I want a card that I can put in like a nice, like, graded case, send it off to Beckett and send it off to Beckett, get a beautiful, like, like one of those long cases that they got for that stuff, and like put it on a nice acrylic stand and display it. It'd be great. I would do that. I want a poster. Get out of here with the posters.
So Mark, why aren't you displaying stuff on your walls? Why don't you have posters and glass cases?
You got plenty of space back there.
Yeah, he's got some.
Part of this is just the way this room is set up. I probably should, think.
Yeah, you got stuff on the floor. Like, that's no way to showcase your cards.
I kind of like those cases of just hoarding. Like, you guys collect sets. I just like hoarding the same cards over and over again. Like, I never get sick of buying like Black Border Vaders. I could just keep buying them like Scrooge McDuck and throwing them in.
Yeah,
it would just make me happy.
What have you been buying recently? What cards do you?
Actually, recently I have been taking a little bit of break from buying just because I don't know, other real life whatever thingamajigs. But I actually have bought one card, and I'll be throwing that on Instagram. And I know I sent you the file for that, Kyle.
That's your card.
Well, yeah, Cam and I did some shenanigans, so I don't want to get too much into the details of that. But that was pretty fun. That was my splurge. I'll just say that much for now, and y'all can stay tuned. But I don't know, like, that's how I keep it fresh. I guess I just don't get sick of buying the same card over and over again. I don't buy sets because it's just a lot of bulk as far as I'm concerned of cards I don't care about. So I'm like, just let me buy Black Border Vaders until the day I die, and I'll be happy. And and then I guess grading just kind of gives it another dimension on top of that, because that's kind of like, to me, like a pseudo like serialized card, because then you're kind of like getting a sense of like, okay, this is how rare like this condition of a card is, as opposed to like, well, there's like 100,000 like Black Border Vaders out there. That's like a lot of them, and I'm sure.
But how many of them were worthy of a 10 at this point?
How many are worthy of a 10? And I'm sure there's still, quite a few would-be 10s out there still. People could bust open their cases, and I'm sure there'll be more. But at least it kind of gets like some sort of a tangible, like, well, this is how many have been unearthed so far, and you could unearth the next one. So now you're on a quest to seek out the Black Border Vaders from the wonders that were mid-90s printing.
I mean, if I pull a Vader, hypothetically, it doesn't sound like I'll pull one anytime soon, but you never know. If I did, I don't think I would grade it, though, because I just want it for my complete set. If I start grading it, then I got to start evaluating, like, oh, do I need to grade the other ones, or should I be grading?
Just grade all the cards. That's problem solved. Have a whole set.
Get like some 7s, and like you're like, now did I make it like worse by giving this a slap of a 7, or did I just say this is a complete set and be done with it?
I mean, I'm kind of biased because I think 7s are still, like, I don't know. I kind of like having the whole spectrum of like graded cards that can exist, and I don't know.
7 is something that could come like pretty much out of a pack, maybe moved.
Oh yeah, with Premiere. Oh, you could definitely pull a 7 out of Premiere. I think Andy said that earlier. It's definitely well within the realm of things that could come out easily.
And foils, I mean, the sensitivity of like, marking the card, it's just like, okay, this is pretty much an instant 8 unless something doesn't happen to this card, essentially.
Yeah.
Even a lot of them, I'm like, these are well centered. They look really great. Got great eye appeal. 8.
It's the way it's going to be.
You're like the king of getting 8s.
No, that, for the record, that stack was Jamie's. He literally gave me those cards. He said, the PSA, and I said, okay. And I just sent him off the PSA. I only threw in like 4 cards myself to piggyback off that order. But those are all his. I sent them off to the UK, and like, I was like, I don't know what you're gonna do with these. Power to you.
John really? He got all the 10s in his submission. That was pretty awesome. Like within the last week or two.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. Those are some good cards you put in there. Because I have my master set essentially, but I don't think I'll grade my master set. I'll just leave them in the binders, whatever.
You can put JP.
No, I just
grade every card.
I'll grade extras of any card. Like the stuff I've been buying is like random foils here or there on like, you know, B Fred's auctions or whatever. I'm like, okay. But I don't know. Sometimes I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm like, why am I buying this card? You know? And I'm just like stuck with a stack of cards like, grade me. You know. It's like, why? I'm like, part of me is like, why did I put these aside? And then the other part of me is like, oh, at one point I thought these were kind of cool. But then I'm like, where am I going to put them? I'm going to put them in a box in my floor, you know, like Mark here, and like them occasionally. Or just shove them
not
in
too
your closet
often.
like candy, or you know, because right now I have a box in my closet on the top shelf. It's graded cards for all the overflow that doesn't fit in my display case, which I like my display case. It makes me happy. It brings me joy. I look at it and I'm like, I'm in a museum of my own stuff. You know, my wife thinks it's crazy, but it's my room, so I'm going to do what I want with it. And I like my glass case of sealed stuff and it's a wall, but I don't know what I'm doing sometimes. I don't want to. Part of me wants to rip open some of the like I have tons and tons of boosters of English stuff to open, but the other part of me is like, I kind of like it being not open. But then the other part of me is like, well, I could grade them. But then it's like, I'm going to get stuck with all these extra cards that I'm just going to sit around. I'm not going to know what to do with. And
if you just want to open packs, just buy like,
I don't even want city cards.
Right. Yeah. If you just want to open packs, just buy like booster boxes of unlimited Star Trek Premiere. It's like $20 a box.
No, but see, that's going wide again. See, I don't want to fall into the Andy trap where I just, you know, spread my wings out a little too far, and then before you know it, the collector in me is like, oh, well, I can complete the set, and like, I should be buying the, you know, the foils, and like, oh, now I want this set, and then before you know it, it's like, why is my credit card maxed out? It's like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I want to stay deep. I want to go deep. I got my.
It's that 2023's motto. I want to go deep.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm gonna pull something. I'm gonna pull something decent out of these Japanese Premier boosters, whether it kills me or not. I'm gonna keep ripping packs. People message me all the time. They're like, "Hey, I got some packs to sell you." I'm like, I don't know why, but I'm like, okay.
You know it's not going to happen, right? Like you're gonna get a light side cantina. You're gonna get.
Well, I've already gotten that. I pulled that before, and
you get the dark side cantina. You're gonna get. Let's see what else.
I already got 2 sand crawlers, all the seekers at least twice, some 3 times.
You're gonna get a tactical recall. You're gonna get rebel planners. You're gonna get what else? What are some other hits?
I've got you now or something. What's the other rare?
You're gonna get another Mahdi.
All the time.
You're gonna get General Taggy. I must have like 150 General Taggies.
Japanese?
No, English ones. What am I gonna do with them? I wanted to make a general. I was thinking about just making a General Taggy deck. Just start Dagobah Cave and play 59 Taggies.
Well, I don't know what to do with my existing Japanese cards outside of the rares too, because I already started a second deck because Matt was like, "Oh, I'm interested if you have like a partial deck, like I'll use that." And I was like, "Cool, I'll use that to trade for sealed product that you have," you know, because it's like, what am I going to do with it? But I'm also like at the same time, I'm like, I'm going to keep adding to it because I'm going to keep opening stuff. So the second set is going to get bigger and bigger. So I'm just at this like impasse of like waiting.
I'll take your senses and altars.
Take all the senses and altars? Japanese senses and altars?
Yeah. If you've got extra senses and altars, I'll take them all.
Oh, I definitely have those. It's such a weird niche, right? The Japanese Premier thing. And that's why I don't know how to stop. Other than if I have other people open it and then I use that as the video of the week, then it buys me another week to think about it. Because my goal is to keep dropping a video Star Wars CCG related, like at least once a week. So That's
You
the
could
goal.
you could you could give me one of the packs to open. I'll film myself opening it, and you can post me opening your pack. It's gonna be a pack that you get like a Vader out of. You're not gonna be able to like have the satisfaction of like
I would never give you that satisfaction. I would never give you that satisfaction. I would stuff a pack full of all seekers and sandcrawlers, seal it at the bottom so meticulously, it would take me like an hour, but even the finest eyes would not catch it, and you'd open it and you'd be like, I think I hit a god pack of terrible stuff.
14 seekers and a
I kind of wanted to do that for a video, like just kind of make a BS pack and open it and just be like, this is my day. Like that's like a short or something. You know? I feel like we need more content, to keep this stuff fresh. And now I feel like I've been doing it for long enough.
Well, I can guarantee you at hour mark 2 hours and 16 minutes, anybody who was listening to this dropped off a long time ago.
I don't know. I mean, so from what I heard, feedback from some of the last ones was some people like the long podcast format because
I like long podcast
listen
format
to
because I have an hour commute every day. So like 2 hours is perfect for me. I listen to an hour on the way to work and an hour back.
Yeah,
It's more than 2 hours, then it kind of gets iffy because then that's going to run into like another day and whatever. But like, especially if it's like towards like a weekend, then it's going to be like 3 days before I listen to it again. 2 hours is good for me. But
all right, so what you're saying is we need to shut up and end this.
Our loyal viewers, thank you for listening. We promise.
Well, I guess we should wrap up this recording. We've kind of gone all over the place. Any final thoughts on whatever we discussed, or any takeaways that you want people to?
I love our loyal viewers who are willing to put up with us for 2 hours and
like and subscribe to Kyle Mullins content.
Well,
I'll plug you.
What I want to know is, and I could always use the feedback from anyone, including you guys if you want, but what is the content that people want to see from Star Wars CCG stuff?
I want to see you open terrible rares out of Premier Packs.
Like English ones, or does it have to be Japanese?
Japanese ones. I think like for every 30 terrible packs, you can open up like one pack that has like Vader's custom tie. Like I don't really want to to be honest, I don't really want to. What is that, like German word, Schadenfreude or something?
Yeah,
like Schadenfreude. Yeah.
Yeah, like I take enjoyment out of other people's misery. like I don't really even want you to like you can get some good card, like it's okay. You could get like a Vader's custom tie like every 30 packs, but like just like light side cantina sandcrawler.
So is this just gonna be Kyle's thing? Like if he ever gets a good hit, just don't air it. Like if there's ever like a JP Vader, just don't air it. So it's just like never anything. It gets
behind the scenes. Oh, I actually pulled it. No, put that away. We need a new pack.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
It's the only time I get a lot of enjoyment out of you pulling really bad Japanese rares.
Well, that's disturbing and enlightening because
I mean, you're talking to the person who wants to beat up your 12-year-old kid, in Lorcana. So,
Mark, what do you get the impression that people want to see more of or hear more of? I mean, I like these chats. I think they're good in moderation here and there. Because it's not like we're doing this every week, right? Like we feel like we're doing these like.
Well, it was like 90% me talking. I think Mark said like 4 words this whole.
That's kind of what I.
Yeah, you went on some long rants about like Hasbro and toys from the 50s, and then it kind of really went off the rails here.
I'm good at kind of just existing in the background, taking things in. So I was in my natural element here. So it was great.
That's why Matt and I are really good at doing things together, because he'll like reel me in, right? Otherwise, I'll be going on about like, the Turkish lira in 1930 and how that impacted like crypto markets. And
well, part of me wanted to see where this rabbit hole went, and hopefully everybody who's stuck around this long has enjoyed this weirdness. All right, well, with that, I will wrap up this recording. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Sounds good. Thanks.